If we could go through the emergency procedures here. If you do have your mobile phone on you, if you could make sure it's switched to silent, please. And noting, of course, that we have some councillors attending via Zoom. If you could just make sure your camera is on and that you use the hand function if you do wish to speak or ask a question. And of course, if we make sure we're using our microphones so everyone online is able to hear us. I will go through to our opening karakia. Please feel free to join me. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia mā kine ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. Okay, moving through to apologies. We do have Councillor Brown, Councillor Barrett and Councillor Tupou attending via Zoom. And we have an apology from Deputy Mayor. We'll move through now to public comment. And we have three members of the public here who wish to speak. First up, Ben Hodges, General Manager of Grants and Marketing and Communications from the NZCT, New Zealand Gaming Community Trust, on our Class 4 gaming policy. Welcome, Ben. You have a total of 3 minutes, and that includes any time for questions. Yes, thanks. Over to you.
Use that for talking. That microphone's on. So, kia ora. Since 2003, many TLAs have adopted sinking lid policies, and pokie machine numbers have reduced dramatically. The red line on the graph at the bottom shows the rate of problem gambling in 2007 was a low 0.4%. And when you jump to 2018, that rate was found to be barely different at 0.2%. It's very clear that sinking lids do not reduce harm. But a sinking lid will ultimately snuff out pokie grants, which help non-profit organisations make your city a happier, healthier and more connected community. Last year, Class 4 societies awarded $5.3 million of grants here in Hutt City. Will Council replace this funding when a sinking lid fulfils its ultimate objective? To do so, you'd need to increase rates by 3%. Who here votes for a $5 million rate increase? No one? Well, look, but eventually that is what you're voting for if you agree to roll over the sinking lid. Problem gambling is a complex disorder that rarely occurs in isolation. You know that the prohibition of pubs or fast food outlets, for example, wouldn't stop alcoholism or obesity. So why do you think a sinking lid would be any different for problem gamblers, especially when they can gamble right now online 24/7? Pokie lounges provide physical gaming environments that operate under strict harm minimisation regulations. Venue staff are trained to be, and by law must be, vigilant for harm and intervene if they see it. And it's proven that gambling has net positive wellbeing benefits of around $2 billion per annum. Think of its entertainment value, the government revenue, the problem gambling levy, and almost uniquely in the world, a wide range of wellbeing returned to the community in the form of grants, community grants. For 98.8% of adults, pokies provide a popular, fun, and safe form of entertainment. Why try to remove them when it doesn't reduce harm? You can't just roll over this policy. That's a $5 million per annum decision you're making without consultation. You must consult with your community, or failing that, at least vote for on a range of options, including sustainable ones. Gambling has been part of the human condition for millennia. It's part of who and what we are. It'll never go away. But you can control it, help those that are addicted, and harness that human desire to gamble for community good. That's what the Class 4 gambling model provides Hutt City. Here's some grants for me.
Questions? Councillor Stallinger.
Thank you. I was just interested in your comment that there doesn't seem to have been much reduction, but it seems to have halved the problem gambling incident, according to. I wouldn't say it's all due to the policy on pokey numbers. So would you attribute that to anything else? And why do you think a halving is not significant?
Well, from a very low base, 0.4% down to 0.2%. I mean, compare that with the United States, for example, where they have their rate of problem gambling is 23 times ours. Australia, twice, and Great Britain 3 times the rate of problem gambling. We have a very low rate of problem gambling, and that's basically just a fluctuation with it. It's not significant, I would argue. 0.4 to 0.2 is insignificant.
Reported problem gamblers, yeah. Councillor Shaw?
How do you measure the problem gambling rate? How did you come to these figures?
That's the Ministry of Health statistics. That's undisputed and agreed by all parties from the side of the debate.
I'm just wondering what sort of measures. And then, as an organisation, do you provide any support to those problem gamblers?
We provide, the Class 4 sector provides over $10 million per annum in a problem gambling levy, which goes to the Ministry of Health, which then gets distributed to service providers. There's a range of them. There's Asian problem gambling support, Māori problem gambling support, and just general advice. On top of that, we, NZCT, spends $800,000 a year voluntarily on harm minimisation training of venue staff. We also invest in facial recognition technology, which problem gamblers can opt into to be excluded from venues. So the technology will ping and say, hey, this person is self-excluded. So we do that on top of the problem gambling levy voluntarily.
And just a last question from me. How much do you think it is going offshore with online gambling?
Yeah, that's an unknown, but it's millions and growing. There's no dispute it's coming. At the moment, that provides no return to the community, no GST, no problem gambling levy, doesn't employ people locally. Class 4 Poke model does that, returns grants to the community and employs local, puts money into the problem gambling levy and GST and government revenue.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So if you're distributing $5 million in Lower Hutt, do you know how much is spent on pokies per year in Lower Hutt by gamblers?
Yeah, it's probably in the vicinity of $30 million per annum, and a lot of that and that breaks down. Once that money goes in the machine, it goes again to GST, to the problem gambling levy, to licences to operate, to the venues to cover their costs and so on, and then of course money going back to the community.
And just to follow up,
and at the moment online gambling does none of that, no return.
Okay. And just to follow up to that, are most of the pokies located in low decile areas across New Zealand and in Lower Hutt?
Well, for us, we've got 3 venues here. One's in Stokes Valley, one's here in the CBD, and one's in Alistown. What I can say is that wherever we operate, we endeavour to return as much as we can back into those same communities where the money's raised. We feel that's the only fair way of doing it, and you'll find most game machine societies operate in the same way.
Well, I'm the ward councillor for Wainuiomata, for example, and we spend $3 million a year on pokies, and we certainly do not get distributed back the proportionate funding. So I'm interested in that, and also the question of, did 2 wrongs make a right? Like, that is a lot of funding, but equally there is a lot of harm. You're minimising those numbers, but those numbers affect a lot of families.
So for every grant we make, we would argue that it also has multiples of benefit. For example, we give money pretty much every year to the Billy Graham Boxing Academy. That facility provides a home away from home for some of some troubled youth and kids that don't have role models or support. That gym has a life-changing effect on...
Yeah, I'm not minimising the grants that you do, not minimising that at all, but I'm saying there's a lot of harm.
Here, so we just have to keep it with questions. There are a couple other questions and we have gone over time. So Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Briggs.
I think we can debate the pros and cons of Class 4 gambling here in New Zealand, but like many people, the overseas-based online gambling services just don't provide any return to New Zealand at all, apart from, I suppose, the entertainment value. Is your organisation organising any? Is it feasible for some way to, if the government was so minded, to kind of block those overseas services? Is your organisation involved in any campaign to get that kind of thing going?
So, firstly, geo-blocking is what you're talking about. You can do that, but all you need is a VPN, and anyone that's got sort of less grey hair than us know how it's a flick of a switch. They can turn on a VPN and they can access gambling globally. So best endeavours, you won't stop it. You can access it. So government are bringing in regulation, hopefully in 2026, that will control and licence onshore providers of gambling, and NZCT, Lion Foundation and Aotearoa Gaming Trust are collaborating on hoping to secure one of those licences, so that those people that are gambling, hopefully we can secure some of that to come back for community good. Again, people are always going to gamble, and we're about trying to at least channel that back into making a positive difference in the community.
Councillor Briggs, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for coming in. My question's around clarity. And so you said a sinking lid policy would lead to $5 million of grant funding being removed from the community. That's not true. A sinking lid does not cut the number of current machines that are currently in operation. And so can you please cite any city in New Zealand where a sinking lid has led to there being 0 Class 4 gaming machines in their city?
So I mean, it's the ultimate objective. The reason why you have a sinking lid is that you're wanting to reduce the numbers ultimately, eventually down to 0. That's the aim of a sinking lid. It's not, otherwise you'd be talking about a cap, which I would encourage. So ultimately, that's the ultimate destination.
Sorry, my question is, can you cite any city in New Zealand with a sinking lid that has got down to 0 Class 4 gaming machines and therefore not returning any grants funding back to community?
I don't know of one.
I mean, I was going to ask a similar question. I mean, we need to operate in reality with the sort of blunt tools we have as a local authority when it comes to Class 4 gaming. So it does feel a bit hyperbolic, a bit of an exaggeration in what you're trying to say to us around what would actually happen in our city to community organisations who might be listening.
Yeah, look, it wouldn't happen today, of course, but that is the ultimate destination, 0 Class 4 grants. And meanwhile, people will still be gambling online and elsewhere for no return to the community.
Yeah, we just like to try and sort of also operate in reality. So Councillor Mitchell, then Councillor Parkin.
Yeah, thank you. You showed us a graph with a declining curve of number of gaming machines, I think it was. What's been the pattern over the same time in terms of gaming machine profits? Are they also trending downwards, or are they trending upwards?
Revenue is, when you adjust for inflation, the spend on gaming machines is down 4.1% from 2010 to 2023. So adjusting for inflation, revenue's down.
So it's going to take a very long time before you've got no revenue coming through if it's down by that small amount over a 20-year period.
Well, we'd like to be around for the long term because, as I say, people always gamble, and we offer a way of getting that money back into the community.
Councillor Parkin, then we will need to move on.
Kia ora. You mentioned VPNs being able to be used by people. You're aware that legislation can be introduced to ensure that websites disable VPNs. Are you aware of that, and are you campaigning on that?
I haven't. I'm not technically minded, other than that VPNs currently can do that. I think where there's a will, there's always a way as well.
So my ask to you would be go and encourage the government and directly lobby the government to ensure that we have beneficial legislation that stops people problem gambling, and then you will drive your market to people because you'll be the only ones left.
Just one final question from me. Would you accept that if our policy from when it was put in place reduced harm for 460 or 230 individuals, and then ultimately their wider family as well, so you could easily sort of probably times that by at least 3, that would be a positive outcome in regards to harm in our community?
Any reduction in harm is, of course, positive, and we support that. We don't want problem
But
gamblers.
that's what this, based on your numbers, which you said were insignificant, that's actually what it translates to people in our city. So we do appreciate you taking the time to come and present. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Now we have Helen Swales. Welcome, Helen.
Kate, could I just have the next slide first? Thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for giving me the opportunity to talk about paid parking, or the proposed paid parking coming to Jackson Street. So there was a paper that was presented to the Petone Community Board which broke down all the sections on Jackson Street, how many parks there were existing and how many were going to be presented under the paid parking. Whilst we don't have an issue with the breakdown, and we went and spoke to the Petone Community Board, there was one area between Bolton Street and Cuba Street which had 34 60 minutes, 3 times P30s, 1 times 120 mobility and 1 motorcycle. And then it talked about what the configuration was going to be. Back in 2018, there was a petition or a request made by a person with a disability to remove one of the disability car parks on Jackson Street. And the car park that, thank you, Kate, and the car park that was removed is the one in the top left-hand corner. And the photo to the right is now a general car park, and it's obviously being used by many people on the street. What happened was that in 2018, when this request went to the Petone Community Board by a person with a disability, it was gained that actually they did canvass a number of businesses around there, and 4 people responded out of those 20 businesses, and 1 community person asking that they wanted that park, that disability park there, to be moved around to Bolton Street, which it did. But we didn't feel that it was actually widely consulted on. We brought it to the attention of the Petone Community Board. We've walked up and down the street with Hutt City Council traffic officers and said, actually, we want that mobility car park back. We've canvassed a lot of businesses and we don't want it back there, but we actually want it back in the third picture where the little red card is, outside Burn Street Pharmacy. And the reason why we want it back on Jackson Street and we want it outside Burns Pharmacy is that we're losing all those 15-minute car parks where people just drop off. We're an ageing population, people get their prescriptions and they want to be able to park there. With the new parking concessions that are coming in, they have to put their $3 in there and pay for an hour, and we don't think that that's fair. So what we would like is, what we're suggesting is hopefully that you will consider to reinstate that disability car park and move it to outside Burns Pharmacy. Now, the 4th picture that I've got there is a disability car park, and it's the very first car park that when you come off Cuba Street and you turn left onto Jackson Street, it is the first car park there. My issue is the same issue when Greater Wellington Regional Council came to this council and wanted to increase the grade-in lines of the bus stops. And the reason why we challenged the one that was when you turned left from Britannia Street onto Jackson Street, the sight lines were really, really poor, and it was a safety issue. We're saying that this car park, where it is at the moment, if you've got a wheelchair and you're taking it off the top of your car and you're pulling it down, a number of disability people have said that they don't feel safe doing that. So what we are suggesting is that this council would actually look to move that more in line with Sopranos, because you couldn't make it any closer, because some of the verandas are held by poles and you wouldn't be able to get in and out of your car. So we want that disability car park to stay there for the mere fact that you've got a dentist there and the vet hospital. So those are the two things that we'd like. The bottom picture down the bottom is that anything from Britannia Street to Cuba Street, we don't have a loading zone at all along there. This is just one picture that I took out there where you've got delivery trucks that park illegally. They cover sight lines turning left. This is at the Crazy Cake on the corner of Buick Street and Jackson Street. But when you look at some of the retailers along there, you've got Mango Interiors, you've got a lot of dairies that all have Coca-Cola, Bidfest, people like that deliver to them on a regular basis, and there's no loading zone there. So what we're asking for is that we want a loading zone somewhere along Jackson Street between Britannia Street and Cuba Street, just from a safety perspective. Those people that disembark and take their, you know, like you've got the table there, you've got Bin Inn, you've got a number of businesses there that have regular deliveries dropped to them, and we've got no place where they can park. So those are the issues that we have, but we'd also like to talk about the parking in Peel Street. We have an issue that, and we haven't had a decent explanation from the officers of why we've gone from 4-hour car parking to 2-hour car parking. We're hoping that we will get some sort of resolution before everything is set in concrete after this meeting as to what's going to happen with those car parks in Peel Street around the library. So those are the issues that the Jackson Street program have got. We're hoping that we will have some sort of sympathy with regard to the issues that we brought to the table. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Helen. Is there any questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mike Fisher, Chair of the Petone Community Board, and this is around paid parking in Petone.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a dark day in Petone today, and not just because of the cloudy weather. I was going to wear a black armband, but I couldn't find anything suitable at home. As you have heard over previous months, it's been a very long fight regarding paid parking being implemented in Petone, and I'd just like to acknowledge the work that the board has done, groups such as JSP, various meetings, petitions, individuals, Facebook comments, etc., to get to where we are today. But however, it's arrived. Just some questions really and a comment. Firstly, I note the proposal to have 6 free car parks behind the library in Peel Place. And I guess after all our battle, that's a very good compromise. So I believe that that should be looked at very closely, and I'm pleased to see that there, because as you know, there's been an awful lot of comment from library users and people using that car park to have some form of acknowledgement of free parking. So I am grateful to see that there. Just some comments that I've noticed from the street today. There were definitely a few gaps in the parking, I suspect because the machines aren't fully operating, is my understanding. And I see that the signage for other areas like parking 10 minutes and all the miscellaneous signage is in the process of being changed. I don't know that that's been completed, and perhaps officers could confirm that later, because I know it will lead to a little bit of confusion with meters and sort of conflicting signs. The other question that I don't believe has been fully answered, and I'm not sure whether you can today, but certainly we would like to get something definitive regarding the revenue from paid parking. And as we've said previously, from the proposals that were put in the draft LTP through to the LTP to subsequent comments, there's been no absolute commitment as to ring fencing it for either Petone traffic issues in Jackson Street, or Petone issues, or transport issues around the greater city, or whatever. So we'd just like some clarity, and I know that as various questions have been answered from members of the public, etc., as we get to this point, that is one remaining one, that the final outcome of revenue from paid parking in Petone, can a definitive statement be given as to what will happen to that? And yes, that's all the comments I'd like to make. Thanks.
Any questions? No? Okay.
That was easy.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay. Now move through to the mayoral statements. So before we get into the balance of our meeting, I'd just like to give a brief overview of what's been happening over the last couple of months. So as you'll all know, of course, we approved the new name for our aquatic facility in Nainai, and we also announced that it will be officially opened on December the 4th, before a community day, which will then celebrate to the wider community on Saturday, the 7th of December. After 5 years of hard work, it's really exciting to be able to open that new facility very shortly alongside all of you. So a very special day, not too long to wait now. Also, I would just like to acknowledge the Civic Honours and Volunteer Awards that we had last week or a couple of weeks ago. I had the privilege of presenting Civic Honours to 5 outstanding volunteers on behalf of Council and of the City of Lower Hutt. These honours recognise those who have gone above and beyond in their service to our community. Juliet Clare, Sharon Horn, Iris Caulfield, Dr. Graham Lyon and Lillian Park, tireless in their efforts behind the scenes to create positive impact in our local communities. And I want to again take this opportunity to thank them and obviously thank all of those who helped with the nomination process, encouraging those nominations, and also the really difficult job of going through the selection here at Council. Also, I'd just like to acknowledge our Mauri Tupu program continues to go incredibly well. As part of that program, we gave out over 2,000 free plants, and I know many of you were part of helping with that, to a register of 350 families, individuals and groups across the Hutt Valley. So they signed up to be able to take up to 5 native plants, trees or shrubs home to plant in their backyard or local area. We also just recently gave away a further 200 plants to our newest citizens at our latest citizenship ceremony, including to the Miller family. Congratulations, Joe, on your citizenship. It's great to see how excited our residents were in picking up these plants to green up their homes and neighbourhoods, and it's good to see how many people are actively getting involved in this particular program. I also just wanted to comment on a couple of transport projects that I was able to go out and see firsthand, the work from the team. So it's great to be able to see the final stages of progress being made at Akatea Road, where our transport team with Sierra Delta Civil have been working to provide a safer walking route for local families, many who use the footpath here to get young children to the local play centre and school. So it's great to be able to see that work very much near completion. And also our intersection upgrades on Bulcott and High Street have been basically completed now. I believe the lights will be turned on maybe today or tomorrow, John, around then, with the ongoing development of Somerset and Bulcott, as well as growing congestion in that particular area, and Hutt Hospital, of course, being right at the heart of that area. It's really important that we make those intersections safer for everyone to be able to use and access those vital amenities, and also for the local businesses there as well. Particularly shout out to them, knowing the disruption that has been there for the last wee while as the work was undertaken. So thank you. Now, is there any any notable, that we wanted to note? No. I believe, and I couldn't quite recall if we did it at our last council meeting, but just Topsy Remuria from Pukeatua Primary School in Wainuiomata. So I just wanted to note that down and certainly pass on this council's condolences to her whānau with the very sudden passing of Topsy. Okay. So now we'll move through to conflict of interest declarations. Is there any conflicts of interest for members to declare? Councillor Briggs?
A couple from me, Mr Mayor. The first one being the Mauri Order Fund for 24-25 The fund is mentioned on pages 318 to 319 of this agenda around the Communities, Culture and Partnership Committee. I won't be taking part in this section of the meeting as I'm acting Chief Executive of Vibe, which has applied for funding from that fund. And secondly, noting item 6B around the review of Class 4 gambling venues and board venue policy on pages 49-50. I'm involved in a number of local community organisations that apply for funding from these organisations, notably as trustee of the Nainai Boxing Academy and as acting CEO at Vibe. I will be taking part in this part of the meeting. My roles do not exclude me today.
Just to avoid probably most of the room saying the same thing, we will note that a number of members obviously are on organisations who would potentially apply for those funds. So I think we can just put that across everyone to avoid that. But is there any other conflict of interest declarations? Councillor Shaw?
Unsure about this conflict, but just declaring that I was on the Fraser Park Sportsville Working Group of a few years ago that was eventually disestablished, but just declaring my involvement.
I don't believe there is any issue there in regards to participation on those items. Okay. Nothing else? Okay, we'll now move to item 6, which is committee minutes with recommended items. So first up, we have the traffic subcommittee from the 29th of August, page 12 of the agenda. So I'd like to invite Chair of the Traffic Subcommittee, Councillor Shaw, to move the adoption of the balance of the minutes.
That the minutes of the Komiti Iti Arawaka Traffic Subcommittee meeting held on the 29th of August 2024 be adopted, pages 12 to 36, with the exception of item 6A to 6L, and that precedence will be given to item 7A, update on traffic subcommittee actions later in this meeting. The meeting will then deal with item 6A, proposed paid parking at Petone, and item 6I, broken yellow lines, no stopping at all times, Orongongo Terrace, Wainuiamata.
Right. So we'll move those along with that precedence of business. So Councillor Dyer, moved by Councillor Shaw, seconded by Councillor Dyer. All those in favour say aye. Councillor Mitchell, you had a...
Yeah, I was going to ask if item 6F could be discussed separately, which is parking at Nainai Pool. It's not otherwise in the paper.
Yes, yep, we can do that. So we'll note down 6F and we'll do that with the other items. Okay, all those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, so now what we'll do then is move to item 7A. And just we'll sort of page number there for everyone. 106. Yep, great. So page 106. If we'd like to Paul Hewitt come forward, Paul. John as well. Welcome, John. So any comments you'd like to make? Obviously, you've heard the comments and public comment as well. Pass it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora koutou, councillors. So what we're seeking this afternoon is the final approval to implement paid parking in Petone. So if approved as per the recommendation, or depending on any tweaks that may occur this afternoon, that will go live this afternoon about an hour after the meeting. But there won't be any enforcement this afternoon. So there's been a little discussion around numbers and where parks are and those sorts of things. So there has been a lot of work done, and in order to implement things by the start date, which is today, you know, if we kind of relitigate where the certain things are, or the length of time, or where certain parks are, it will delay the implementation and of the program accordingly. So a couple of things we've looked at as requested by members of the public and elected members is around Peel Street car park, and there's an elected member's response that some of you may not have had time to read. that came out probably about an hour ago around, as per Councillor Dyer's questions around Peel Street. So the proposal is to keep 6 parks at Park 120. So all of the parks in there to change to P120. Generally for the use of library and community centre patrons, but keep 6 as for non-charging, so basically free. Should we go further than 6, we will then need to go away and do a little bit of work on some numbers around what that actually means. But if we look across the other parts of the city where we have paid parking for longer than 2 hours, it is a flat $10 for all-day parking. So what would happen is you would have Peel Street where people will pay $10 for 4 hours, and you come across a couple of kilometres to the city and you'll have $10 and they're there basically all day. So it is inconsistent across the rest of the city. And if we went to sort of $10 all day for Peel Street, then it basically just becomes an all-day park for workers. And they'll just park there and stay there all day. So for turnover of parks, for particularly the use of the library and the community centre, it is our recommendation to keep it to change to Park 120 as per the recommendation, but keeping 6 as free parking. So open to any questions, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Councillor Park and then Councillor Dyer.
Kia ora. Just reflecting on your comment about the fact that if somebody came to the Hutt, they would be able to park here for $10 for the whole day. In the parking policy, the document that we're proposing to, or putting through over time, obviously not in place, hasn't gone out for discussion yet. That document will be having a section which will allow us to increase parking fees where there is demand. So the argument of having an inconsistency over particular areas, I'm not seeing as particularly convincing. I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. At the moment, the demand is in the 2 areas. It's in Petone and in the CBD, generally. So we're trying to standardise as much as possible, and there will be areas where we will need to look at that. But if people are parking, there's a number of different zones. What we've tried to do over the last couple of years is actually make them a consistent timing and consistent amount. So that if you're parking in Jackson Street, then the time frames generally are around the same as if you're parking in the CBD, and it's about the same cost. So the more times you chop and change, like in some other cities around the country, it does get quite confusing for people. So the easier we can make it, more blanket rules where possible, that's what we're trying to do.
Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, I'm still confused about the $10 all day parking. Like the Peel Street, Jackson Street, CBD is retail parking. You can't park anywhere there for $10 a day. It's $3 an hour, full stop. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So if we change it to Park 240 or 4 hours, then the cap's $10. So it becomes $10 for 4 hours, not 12.
Why is there a cap? Do we have to have a cap like that?
In some of the parking zones, such as on Myrtle Street, where there's unrestricted all-day paid parking, it caps at $10 for the day.
Yep, and same with the Riverbank car park, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about HC2 retail parking. It's $3 an hour. There's no cap. Why? I understand Myrtle Street and Riverbank car park, yep, full day, $10, that's fine. That's not what Peel Street is.
So, we need to investigate the machines, but there is the possibility. It just depends on how much more work we want to do and how long we want to delay the implementation to go back and look into these things. If councillors want Park 240 at $3 an hour, then that's something that will take a little bit of time to work with the company on the machines, etc., to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
I just want to build on the comment you made. P240 will potentially become all-day park for workers. Aren't they required to move after a certain period of time?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that was in the case of when we were comparing all-day parking for $10. That if you you know, and whether if we're going to go down that track, we might as well just make that all day for $10 if you're going. So that was kind of the argument. But I suppose the other key part of this is primarily for library and community centre patrons. So that is the kind of the focus that we see this for this car park. So that's where we believe that the Park 120 should be sufficient.
Any other questions, Councillor Parkin?
Just wondering what feedback you've had from the disabled community in terms of the P120 being sufficient in the disability parks.
Through you, Chair, none to our knowledge, Councillor.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, so what we'll do now is move through to the recommendations which we've got in front of us. First off, just receiving and noting the information as well. Oh, apologies. What we'll do, let me repeat that, is there any, we need to address Councillor Dyer's issue which you've raised. So,
yeah, I'm happy to move a motion that the Peel Street car park retains the current P240 time limit, obviously alongside the paid parking. And I feel like there probably also needs to be a recommendation just acknowledging those 6 P120s in there as well, because it's just a noting paper. But the recommendation actually is to introduce 6 P120s, which I'm happy to include in there as well.
Yep.
As per the appendix.
Yeah. So what we'll do then is move this paper, receive a note, and then we can address that in the next one. But I think yep. Okay. So I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Just receiving noting. Councillor Dyer. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay. And then moving through to 6A. So we've got the recommendations all in front of us, and we've got an additional recommendation on the floor, Councillor Dyer. So do you want to just repeat that again, Councillor Dyer?
Yeah, so I'll move that the Peel Street car park retains the current P240 time limit alongside paid parking.
And Councillor, Councillor Mitchell, is this where you wanted to raise your?
No, that's item 6F.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. Yep. Councillor Briggs.
There's clarity, Councillor Dyer, on your wording. You're saying retains 240 alongside paid parking. You're saying with paid parking, correct? So those parks will be paid. Thank you.
Did you have a comment there, John?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify. All parks paid parking at 240, so no P120s and no free. Was just the clarification.
No, still including the 6 P120s that are recommended through this paper, including those 6. Just changing
so
the
the
time
6
limit.
free ones at 120, and then the rest, everything else is at 240 in that car park. Yep. Basically, that's what you're suggesting. Yeah.
So we'll just have to confirm timing on that, Mr. Mayor, and then just reiterating library and community centre patrons on the signage. So,
Councillor Parkin.
Can we ensure that it says parking and mobility spaces so that we don't change the mobility spaces either?
Sorry, what was the question? Sorry.
All car parks. Just the way that it's phrased in item 4 on the previous minutes, it says parking and mobility spaces, just so that we're clear.
Okay. Is that covered? Happy that that's covered, John, with the recommendation?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just confirming, so the rest of the parking meters will go live this afternoon, but Peel Street will take a couple of weeks. So.
Okay. Okay. Yep, if that motion's passed. Okay, so we're all clear on that? Okay, do we want to take that separately, or do we want to take that in the balance of the paper? The balance of the paper? Okay. So I'll move recommendations 1 through to 10 with additional recommendation, which is for the paid parking in Peel Street to go from 120 to a proposed 120 to 240. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, you're moving item recommendation
just replacing
4.
four.
Yeah,
Just replacing 4. Yep. Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried.
Were you going to take the?
Well, sure. Yep. But,
Just to clarify, I'm intending to vote against this one. Well, I guess I have already, but thanks for the opportunity to speak. You may recall during the LTP, I voted against the introduction of paid parking in Petone this year, but was clear to express that I was not actually against paid parking for Petone, but just that this wasn't the right time to do it. I won't repeat my reasoning at the time, but I'm voting against the recommendation today.
okay. So that was moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dyer. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay. Now we'll just. Okay. Yep. So we'll move through to 6I on page 29 of the agenda. It's just, okay, yep. So it's just these noting recommendations, and so I'll move them. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shaw, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. I've kind of got my papers sort of mixed up, as you may be able to tell, so jumping from different numbers to letters on traffic items. So can we just clarify where we're... Okay. So Councillor Mitchell, so we'll move through to 6F.
Yeah, that's on page 20.
We'll cover that. So page 20, thanks.
So just for context, for people who weren't in the traffic subcommittee meeting a month or so ago, there was a proposal for how parking would be allocated outside Nainai Pool and also in the new car park that's being created there. And there had been consultation done, and the majority of comments from the public were about the provision of 4 EV chargers in quite a small car park out the back of the pool. There's 22 car parks there in total, and 4 of those were proposed to be P120 EVs, a couple of mobility parks, and 16 P120s with 2 designated for parents. So there had been a request for information about how much our EV chargers in EV parks at council facilities are used around the city. Because the real concern, I think, is that we'll put 4 EV parks in that quite small car park. They'll sit empty most of the time because no one will be charging their EVs, and everyone else will be driving around looking for car parks, either getting grumpy about the fact that there are empty ones there or just parking in those ones even though they're not driving or charging EVs. There was some information requested, and it came through actually during the meeting but wasn't considered in the meeting, but it came through elected members' request. You all received it, which showed that across our various council facilities which have EV chargers, the average utilisation in the available time is 2.6% of time. That's on a 24-hour basis, so you can double that if Nainai Pool's going to be open 12 hours a day. I'm not sure exactly the opening hours. We're still getting used about 5.2% of the time, and an even lower amount where there are 3rd or 4th chargers provided. So contrary to the recommendation in the paper 2C, I would just like to simply propose that at this stage we install 2 EV chargers, and that the other 2 parks are retained as generic P120s, and my understanding is that they can be changed to EV parkers. Chargers can be installed there in future. The wiring and the conduit and stuff's already in place.
Okay. Did you want to provide any comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's probably an Andy Quinn question as the project manager for Nainai Pool. I'm sorry, so we can try and get him to come in later in the meeting and revisit.
Yeah, we could revisit it later in the meeting. Andy was at the subcommittee meeting and assured us that was possible. That was my understanding, that they could be installed at a later date, that there may be additional cost involved, but these are Meridian charges, not Hutt City Council charges.
From memory, he did question whether Meridian was happy to just put it in two. Obviously, they'll have some cost benefit analysis they've done on the number of charges they are funding. So, but I don't think we got clarity of that at the meeting.
Councillor Parkin.
Just want to note that Andy was also going to give us feedback on whether or not we could actually designate the car parks to be used by anybody, not be EV specific, but still install the chargers. And we haven't heard back from that information. I think that is actually the solution that I would prefer, that we install the chargers, but just don't make them designated EV only.
Yeah, I don't think we can go down. It's a tricky one to do, Councillor. What we'll do is we'll wait. We're going to come back to this particular item. So I've had enough of traffic, so we're going to move on. Okay. But what we'll do in the meantime is we'll leave item 6F open, and then we'll move items 6G to 6H and J to L. So that's the balance of all of those other items. There was no issues with any of those papers. No. So, well, Councillor Shaw, are you happy to move those? Or is there any comment you want to make on them?
No, I'd just like to move that those items, excluding XF, which will be discussed later, be adopted.
So do we have a seconder? Councillor Dyer, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, now page 46. So this moves on to item B, which is the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee from the 10th of September. I'd like to invite Councillor Mitchell to move the adoption and the balance of the minutes.
I move that the minutes of the Committee Ratonga Rangatopu me te Rautaki, the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee meeting held on 10th of September 2024 be adopted. That's pages 46 to 54 of the agenda, with the exception of items 6A to 6C.
Seconder for that? Councillor Stallinger, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. And just also under Presidents of Business, pursuant to Standing Order 10.4, I'll accord precedence to item 7B, which is recommendation from the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee on the control of alcohol in public places. And this is on page 111 of your agenda. So Richard, would you like to come forward if there's any comments you would like to make, and then also any comments, Councillor Mitchell, you would like to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Kia ora, Mayor and Councillors. So the purpose of this report is to present you with the final marked up version of the control of alcohol in public places bylaw following the hearings and deliberation by the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee. The things to point out to you that came through in that meeting was the request for and the addition of 2 new alcohol-free zones, one in Moera and one in Waterloo. And these are included for you in the report, page 136 and 137 of the report. Committee also asked for officers to investigate a couple of other things. That's data on alcohol-related crime in the Frederick Wise Park and also at Burdens Gate down south of Eastbourne. They also asked for a review of signage and messaging in alcohol-free zones around the city. Work has started on both of those items, but we need some time to pull everything together. So you're presented with 2 options in the paper. One is to accept and endorse the current bylaw, which includes the 2 new alcohol-free zones in Moera and Waterloo. The other one is to actually wait until we come back and report back to the committee. Now, within the bylaw, there is the provision to make any further changes by resolution. So our recommendation contained in the report is to accept it, the bylaw as it is today, and then we will bring back a resolution if required for any further changes.
Thank you, Richard. And Councillor Mitchell, any comments you'd want to make?
Yeah, just a quick comment, a couple of comments, and firstly, thanks to the other councillors who joined me on this hearing. Councillors will remember we were consulting across 3 pieces of alcohol policy at the same time. There wasn't a huge amount of feedback in total on those, but the alcohol-free zones in Waterloo and Moira are something we had discussed before we went out with the draft. One of the issues was that we didn't really have any data to base those on, so thank you to the officers who went and found that data, and it was quite compelling data that there is quite high amounts of alcohol-related offending in Waterloo and Moira, which is why we've chosen to add those 2 suburbs. The data that we've requested further information about, again, because our decisions have to be based on data, were disorder in Frederick Wise Park and Burdens Gate, which both came through public submissions from locals to those areas who were concerned about alcohol-related behaviours in those areas. So we don't have that data yet. And just finally, the request for review of design and messaging and placement of signage, I think we'd made it already, but it also came through from the police that they are quite willing to accept. I didn't know this was a liquor-free zone because I didn't see a sign as an acceptable excuse for people to be drinking in those areas. So they actually called on us to have more signage, particularly here in the CBD from memory, but very visible signage so people can't pull that excuse on them in future. So that's why we've asked for a review of not the design of our signs, but also the placement of them and some of the messaging on there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell, and thank you to those who heard the submissions and came up with these recommendations. Okay, anything else? Any questions? No? Okay, so we'll move to the recommendations that are in front of us, and that is to recommendation 1, which is to agree to adopt the amended draft control of alcohol in public places bylaw attached as Appendix 1, and then the additional 2 noting recommendations as well. And so I'll move, I'm happy to, or Councillor Mitchell, would you like to move that? Is there another member of the committee who would like to move that? Councillor Edwards? Okay, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. I declare that carried. Okay, so now we will move. Okay, yep. So just a point of clarification. So the recommendations relating to item 6A, which was the public submissions on the control of alcohol in public places bylaw, do not need to be considered by council as they've already been superseded by the resolution which we've just passed, just so everyone's clear. So now moving through, we'll move on to item 6B, which is the review of Class 4 gaming venue board and venue policies. So this is on page 49. And you'll see the recommendations that are here. Councillor Mitchell, did you want to make any comment on this one?
Not other than was provided in the committee paper, but for the benefit of people who weren't on the committee, was the opinion of our officers that the changes that we made to the policy last time around haven't really had time to bed in, and there's not a lot of data to show a lot of change. So it was decided to continue essentially with the existing policy without going out and consulting on it again, just a short time after it was last changed, noting that next time this rolls around, hopefully there'll be some really robust data about what effects it's having.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, any questions? No? Okay, we'll move the recommendations 1 through to 5 in front of us, which is to roll over the existing Class 4 gaming venue and board venue policy with no changes as attached as Appendix 1. I'll happily move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Item 6C, draft parking strategy on page 50. Councillor Mitchell, any comment on this one?
Just to acknowledge the officers for preparing the draft after having consulted some key stakeholders. So there's some quite good feed into that draft before it goes out to the public, and also from the committee as well. So just noting that the parking strategy has been updated since the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee, with some feedback from the committee itself, and that the updated version is attached to the agenda on page 61.
You happy to move that, Councillor?
Yes.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dyer. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee from the 12th of September on page 86 of our agenda. So I'd like to invite Councillor Edwards as chair of the committee to move the adoption of the balance of the minutes.
Thanks. I move that the minutes of the Komiti Hanganga, the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee meeting held on 12 September 2024 be adopted, pages 86 to 103, with the exception of item 5.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Salinger. Did you have a comment you'd like, Councillor Mitchell?
But just a quick question about the first page of these minutes on page 86. It's noted on the minutes that Councillor Barrett was present, and then noted in a footnote that Councillor Barrett was not in attendance at the meeting. And I just kind of felt that was an unusual way of explaining what happened there. I'm not sure what did happen there, but it says she was present and absent.
True. That's quite a feat. So we'll just clarify that. Okay, yep. I think the unusual description there came to Councillor Barrett had put in her apologies for lateness, but we were so efficient with the meeting that we finished before Councillor Barrett actually was able to, because it went quite quickly. So, but we'll get a clarification on that to remove the present side. Happy with that, Councillor Barrett? Cool. Okay. Thank you. Well spotted. Okay, so moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Dyer. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Item 5.
Yeah, item 5 relates to a discussion we had on the Cross Valley Connection objectives and updating those, page 88 of the agenda. And the objectives have been updated, so the new recommendation is to read that Council approves the updated Cross Valley Connections objectives attached as Appendix 2, and that's on page 105, where we have included, after some feedback from Dr. David Tripp, that there should be mention of our integrated transport strategy and our aims of reducing emissions and providing active transport options. So I'm happy to move that.
Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconder. Councillor Mitchell, any discussion? Councillor Dyer?
Yeah, fully supportive of these changes. Just wondering if we could just tweak the wording slightly just to say align with our integrated transport strategy, just so it's really clear what we're talking about. It just says to align with integrated transport strategy. Page 105, so the new section, the green box has been added, just to make it really clear we're talking about Hutt City Council's integrated transport strategy, which I understand will be attached as an appendix to this paper anyway, but just to make it clear that this is our strategy and these are the things we're bringing to the table.
An R, and then we can approve that. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, moving through to item 7, which is miscellaneous items, and we have 7A, which has been covered, and 7B, which has been covered. So that's great. And then we will go to 7C, which is the Fraser Park Sportsville update. And this is on page 141 of the agenda. So Andrea, if you'd like to come forward. Thanks, Andrea. I'll pass it over to you.
Kia ora tātou through you, Mr. Chair. This paper updates you on the transition of Rico Sports Centre from management by Fraser Park Sportsville back to council from today. The paper talks about the new, the interim operating model that'll be in place for the next 3 months, From today, signs are going up on the facility to advise of what new arrangements are, and Council's website's been updated to provide information, including links to new ways of booking for the facility. The subtenants remain on site, and the toilets, changing rooms, lights and fields remain open and available as usual. The paper also talks about the financial impacts of this transition and notes that they will be reported on in Council's regular quarterly performance reporting. You'll see from the paper that we have recently met with the Fraser Park Sportsville founding clubs. They have asked that you be made aware that they are very keen to be involved early in the contract negotiations with new operators. Understandably, they're really concerned about the impact of a new operating model on their own operations. And the most recent meeting that we had, we did undertake to involve them in those negotiations. And at what point we involve them will have to be determined, taking into account the needs of all of the stakeholders involved in this conversation. But we have certainly made a commitment to involve them. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Any questions from councillors? No? Okay. So we'll move to the recommendations, which is just 3 noting recommendations on page 141. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Thanks, Andrea. Item 7D, the delegations register. It's on page 151 of the agenda, and we have Brad Cato here to speak to that item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a little bit of an administrative update to the delegations register. At paragraphs 4 and 5, it sort of tells you how delegations operate, which is similar to a lot of councils, where council, for administrative efficiency, you guys can't do everything yourself, so you delegate to the CEO to do everything, not everything, but a lot of things. And then the CEO then delegates down to officers. So our delegations are in 2 parts. I say it's a bit of an administrative update because you'll see at paragraph 8 what we've actually changed and updated, and it's more about updating the list of bylaws because some of the years have changed. We picked up a couple of things powers that certain officers didn't need to have because they weren't really performing that function. And then there's a whole lot of role changes. So there's nothing particularly substantive in amongst it all. Happy to take any questions generally or about these changes though. Thank you.
Any questions from councillors? No? Okay. So I will move the recommendation that council approves the changes made to the delegations register as attached as Appendix 1 to the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Item 8, which is council minutes. So I'll move that the council meetings minutes of the 25th of July, 26th of August, 6th of September and 10th of September be confirmed as a true and correct record. Any comment on the correctness of those minutes? No. Seconder, Councillor Edwards. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, committee minutes without recommended items. So we will take them in block rather than go through. So I will move all of the committee minutes without recommended items. So that is 8A, B, C, D, E. Any comment on those, Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, just a minor correction in the Communities Committee minutes, page 318. There's a reference in there to a comment about Council's Generosity NZ database. Generosity NZ database is an external product that Council subscribes to and offers to our ratepayers, but it's not our database. So I think the word councils in there could just be replaced with the.
Got that? Yep, great. Any other comment on those collection of minutes? No, so I've moved them, seconded with that correction from Councillor Mitchell. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no, declare that carried. Moving through to the Sealing Authority on page 324 of the agenda. And I will move the recommendations on page 324, seconded by Councillor Parkin. Is that a chin? Yep, okay. All those in favour say aye. Those against no, declare that carried. Item 11, I've received no questions, so we'll now move through to... Oh, yes, yep. We do have 6F. Are we ready to go with that?
Unfortunately, we've been unable to contact the Nana project manager. John has an idea on how we might progress.
Through you, Chair, can we refer that to Mayor and Chairs for a final decision? Because he's been away for a period of time and only just back in the country. So in the last day or so. So we really need Andy here for to talk through that. So.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that the delegation is to me a consultation with the Mayor and Chair, so I can, and that way you've got the consultation you need, but there's a properly constituted way of making a decision if that's acceptable to you. Insofar as it relates to those 4 EV places.
Councillor Mitchell, are you happy with that? Okay. Very good. And that just avoids us having to bring something back to a council meeting. I think that's the, yep. Okay. Do we need a particular recommendation on that? Or if you would, so in regards to item 6F, we'll move that.
Insofar as the proposal for EV places is concerned, this matter is delegated to the Chief Executive in consultation with Mayor and Chairs for decision implementation.
Yep, that's it. That captures things. Comfortable? Yep. Okay. So I'll move that. Seconded, Councillor Mitchell. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no, declare that carried. Okay. Moving through then to questions. I've received no questions. Item 12, which is exclusion of the public, and I'll move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the meeting. 13, committee minutes without recommended items. 14, Rico Sports Centre update. And that Wendy Edwards, Colin Stone, Caleb Mead, Sarah Boys and Liz Leproux, members of the Fraser Park Sportsville Board, and Zanta Jones from Sport New Zealand be permitted to remain after the public section of the meeting as they have knowledge that will assist council in relation to these items or this item. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs. Any